Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to Ball Games and Beyond. I am your host, Evan Groat, and Ball Games and Beyond is brought to you by Sportsnaut.com. Please make sure you are continuing to go out there and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. You can click that notifications bell as well to make sure you're always getting all of our new content that is up there for you each and every day. Also, you can follow and subscribe to the audio version of the podcast by searching Ball Games and Beyond on your favorite podcasting platform. Don't be afraid to leave me a positive 5-star review and rating as well if you don't mind. You could also give me a follow on X at eGroat5 if you want to continue to get some of my thoughts on the world of sports. Now, there's a lot of different places I could go with our show this week. Caitlin Clark once again in the news, not for the right reasons. She's getting roughed up a bit here in the early parts of her WNBA career. I heard a lot of that on the radio today. Of course, we've got the third leg of the Triple Crown this weekend, the Belmont. I was thinking about going there as well, but I decided to go with the topic of the NBA. Of course, the NBA Finals tips off this week on Thursday. It is the Boston Celtics matching up against the Dallas Mavericks. It's an interesting matchup with these two teams here. Boston, one of the most historic franchises in NBA history, seeking their 18th NBA championship. And then Boston, on the other hand, only has one NBA championship right now. That was in 2011. They're looking for number 2. We're going to be joined by our guest this week, Justin Termine, who is host of NBA Today on Sirius XM Radio. You can hear that show every day, 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and Justin is on top of it. He does a great job on his radio show. We're going to talk to him about some of the major storylines heading into this series. There's a lot of good storylines here. You got the return of Kyrie Irving to Boston. That'll be interesting to see the kind of ovation he gets or welcome he gets from the rowdy fans in Boston. I think there's an interesting matchup with the coaches in this one. Both of these guys were under some fire a year ago, and now they find themselves in the NBA Finals. And then the third big storyline, I think, is the health of Kristaps Porzingis for the Boston Celtics. He's been out for the entirety of the playoffs this year. He was a part of that big three with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And, the status of him this series could play a huge factor in the outcome. So we'll have to wait and see. That's something we have to monitor as we get a little bit closer to Thursday's game. Now, each of these teams has taken a really different path to get here to the finals. You have Boston, who is coming off a really dominant 64-win season. They were really the best team in the NBA all year long. There was no doubt about it. I mean, I did this show just a few weeks ago at the beginning of the playoffs where we talked about if it was a championship or bust for Boston. I still feel that way. I'm not sure how you feel, but I think there's an immense pressure on Boston to break through. This is their second finals appearance and third in 3 years with this core group of players that they have intact here. So I think there's a lot of pressure on them to get it done. And just to kind of to give you some measuring sticks here, to truly how good and how dominant they were this season, I have some stats here that I want to read for you. The 23-24 Boston Celtics, their point differential was 11.34 points per game this year. That ranks them 5th all-time behind some really, really good teams in NBA history. I'm talking about the number 1 team in point differential, which was the 71-72 Lakers, okay? We're talking about number 2 on that list, the 70-71 Bucks with Kareem. The number 3 team in that list was the 95-96 Bulls. And then the 4th team on that list was the 16-17 Golden State Warriors. So they're in pretty rarefied, air there with those other 4 teams with this point differential. And one of the things that all 4 of those teams have in common that I just mentioned to you was that they won the NBA Finals in that particular season. So there's some good karma there going for the Celtics. Now, on the other hand, you have Dallas, who was not a team who dominated their way through the regular season. They were, a good team. They were finished 4th in their conference, at the end of the season. But what they did was they were very aggressive at the trade deadline, and they kind of really reworked their roster and brought in a couple players that have been really, really good for them. They've meshed really well with Luka. They've meshed really well with Kyrie and some of the other guys that they already had in that roster. And they went into the playoffs playing very, very well. And that play has continued all throughout the playoffs. They have beat some of the top teams in the Western Conference. And although Boston might be the better team from the regular season, Dallas might be the hottest team right now as they head into this series. So it should be a good one. It tips off on Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast here. I'm looking forward to it. I know you guys are as well. I'm going to get to a break right now, and when we return, we're going to be joined by our guest, Justin Termine. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to Ball Games and Beyond, brought to you by Sportsnaut.com. And welcome back to Ball Games and Beyond. And joining us now to break down the NBA Finals is Justin Termine, host of NBA Today on Sirius XM Radio on the NBA channel. You can hear that show every day, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And Justin, I know you just got off the air, so we're happy that you made a few minutes for us. Interesting matchup we have here with the Celtics and the Mavericks. There's a lot of different storylines to discuss here, so let's get to it. These two teams took a very different path to reach the NBA Finals. Boston followed up a dominant 64-win season by really kind of, easing their way through the playoffs, 12-2 record to this point. And then on the other side of that, you have Dallas, who really kind of retooled their roster at the trade deadline, added a couple of pieces, which have really meshed well with the group of players they already had. They've eliminated some of the top teams in the Western Conference as the number 5 seed in the Western Conference playoffs. Some people out there, when you look at, the rosters from top to bottom, and when you look at some of the numbers throughout the season, they might think this is a lopsided finals here. What are some of your thoughts on that? And just, again, the kind of different paths that each of these two teams have taken to get to the finals.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it and you would say that it's lopsided because I think there's a 14-win difference. And last year, I felt the finals were lopsided when Denver was going up against the Miami Heat. I think there was only a 9-win difference there. And heading into that one, you thought that Denver was easily going to win, and Denver easily won. With this one, yeah, the numbers say something, I think, differently than what your eyes tell you and what your mind is telling you, because Boston, historic regular season, 64 wins, Dallas only 50, 11.4 point differential, which is the 5th best of all time, next to 4 other teams that won, all ahead of them, won championships, had all-time great teams, whereas Dallas only outscored their opponents by just over 2 points per game. But here's the thing you got to look at: what Dallas did at the trade deadline and really what Dallas was like since March. And it's reminiscent, I think, of that Celtics team in 2022, which struggled under Ime Udoka until about the first of the year. Then they got hot and they stormed to the NBA Finals. That's what Dallas has done this year. It's taken them a little bit longer than that Celtics team, but they got hot at the beginning of March. And really, they've been the best team in the NBA ever since early March, even better than Boston. So I think it's a fairly even matchup.
So you talked about Dallas getting hot at the right time. We all know Boston has been the better team for the majority of the season, but as these two teams enter the finals right now, how important is it, or how much of an advantage is it to Dallas that maybe they're the hotter team right now, maybe not the better team, but the hotter team right now playing better basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I think that matters to some extent. And the other thing that I think matters is them just having the best player on the floor, because I think it's a pretty clear gap. And if you go back, and I did it on the show today, and I looked at every title winner since Jordan's first championship back in 91, how many of the teams that had the better player in the finals won the championship? From my calculations, and everybody's views it differently as to who the better player in a series is, 23 times the team with the best player won, 8 times the team lost, and then twice I would say that it was fairly even between who the 2 best players in the series were. So I think it does give you an advantage when you have Luka Doncic. As good as Tatum is, I think there's a clear gap between where Luka is and where Tatum is. Now, Boston, to me, has 5 of the top 7 players, but they don't have the best player, and the best player is Luka.
Yeah, so, on that same, kind of topic there, you like Luka more than Tatum. Which one of the team's duos? Because there's a lot of star power in this series. You've got Dallas with Luka and Kyrie, and then Boston with Jaylen Brown and Tatum. Which one of the duos do you like better, and do you think they'll be enough to get their team over the top?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the flashier one is in Dallas. Which one do I trust if it's the last 5 minutes in a close game? Probably Kyrie and Luka because of the shot creation. Who do I like for an entire 48-minute game? The duo might then swing to Jaylen Brown and Tatum because of what they can do defensively and the consistency that Jaylen Brown has had in the postseason as well. Let's not forget that Kyrie was just okay against Oklahoma City. I think he averaged about 15 points, around 44% shooting, so he wasn't great. I think the big advantage for Boston comes if Porzingis is healthy, and the difference between the third best player for the Celtics and the third best player for Dallas. Because let's not forget, Porzingis this year, over 20 points, over 50% from the field, almost 2 blocks per game, was one of the top 5 rim protectors based off opponent field goal percentage at the rim this year when he was planted there in the paint. So Porzingis is clearly, if healthy, the fifth best player in the series, and then you have Derek White and Drew Holiday before you would even start talking about maybe like a Derek Lively as the third best Mav.
Yeah, so what is the latest you're hearing on Porzingis? We know he's been out the entire playoffs. He's a great player for this team. We just talked about it. What's the latest you're hearing on him? And do you think Boston can win a title without him? Should he not be able to play?
I mean, they can, but it's not going to be easy, and he certainly helps. I mean, I honestly think that you can make a argument that during the regular season, he, as Boston's third best player, was just as good as Kyrie, as Dallas's second best player, especially when you factor in what Porzingis did defensively and the impact he has on the rest of the offense from spreading the floor and not allowing guys like Derek Lively and Gafford in this series to just plant underneath the paint and defend the rim. From what I'm hearing, he's going to play in Game 1. That seems to be where the momentum is heading. Now the question is how healthy he is going to be, what type of rhythm. Hasn't played in over 40 days, and he's playing at now the highest level of the league, of really the world that has to offer, the highest level of basketball. So it might take some time to get his rhythm, to get his wind. That could be a negative here for Boston for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be one concern that I would have if I'm a Boston fan is that ring rust, I guess you'd call it. How quickly does he get back to form and mesh with this team after being out for so long? I think that's a big storyline heading into the game. And one of the other big storylines in this series is Kyrie Irving and his return to Boston. He's once again playing that role of Robin to Batman as he did with LeBron James all those years ago. In Cleveland, we talked about, you mentioned how he played in the series against the Thunder, but he's playing really well right now. Talk about his maturation, from his time, some tumultuous years there in Boston as well as Brooklyn to his time now with the Mavericks.
I mean, he's been absolutely fantastic. I said at the time of the trade that I thought it spelled the end for Luka Doncic in Dallas when they signed him to an extension. So I didn't have much faith that it was going to work out. It's proven that I'm incorrect because now they're on the precipice of a championship where I thought it was going to end, his days in Dallas. So he's been absolutely fantastic. It can be two things. Like it can be, hey, he's a great number 2. He's about to win the NBA championship. But it could also be the negative to, he was non-existent in Boston and almost put that organization in the spot where they couldn't recover, and he did the same thing in Brooklyn. Like I'm hearing all this talk about where does it rank him as the best duo or the best Robin of all time. Well, he's still pretty far down the list, even if he gets a title, because some of these other Robins didn't disappear for 7 years. Imagine if Scottie Pippen disappeared for 6-7 years on right. Jordan, what that would do to the legacy of Jordan, or if Kobe disappeared for 6 or 7 years on Shaq, or if Cousy did it to Russell, or McHale did it to Bird. So he's an amazingly talented player, but his lack of maturity really is going to end up costing him his legacy long-term because of what took place in Brooklyn and Boston.
Yeah, fair enough. Our guest this week on Ball Games and Beyond is Justin Termine. He's host of NBA Today on Sirius XM Radio, the NBA channel, 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time every day. And you can follow Justin on X at Termine Radio. So go out there and do so. He's a great follow for all of your NBA content and information. Justin, do you have any concerns about Jason Tatum? He hasn't shot the ball all that well from 3 throughout the playoffs. He's shooting at just 29%, down from about 38% during the regular season. How concerned are you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the three has obviously been a little disappointing. The rest of the game, I haven't seen any issue with. So if he gets hot from three, all the more reason to feel confident in Boston. I actually think that the criticism has been unfair that's been directed towards him. If you look at his overall resume, one, they went 12-2 in the postseason. What more would you like him to do up to this point? I mean, you want him to go 14-0 or heading into the postseason? I don't think that's fair. Or I should say 12-0. He went 12-2. Not going to be perfect. There's a difference between him and Luka, him and Giannis, him and Jokic, him and, the top of the league. But he's still like the fifth, sixth best player in the sport. And I think his postseason resume, tell me one game where James Harden has dropped 50 points in a game 7 like he did last year against Philadelphia. Give me one game where James Harden or Russell Westbrook or Joel Embiid have given you 46 on the road against the defending champs like he did against the Bucks when they were down 3-2 in a game 6. His postseason resume, he doesn't have the title, but it's significantly better than some of these other guys that take less flack in my estimation here over the last couple of years. Now all he needs is a championship to sort of solidify it.
Absolutely. Definitely needs a championship there. One of the other storylines I think that I'm going to be keeping an eye on here is the coaches in this game. I think back a year ago, and I think there were some subtle question marks about each one of these coaches and whether or not maybe they were the long-term answer for each organization. You fast forward a year now, and here they are in the NBA Finals. Who do you give the coaching edge to in this one?
I'll give it to Jason Kidd. I think he's done a brilliant job. And it dates back to he's always been a mastermind at putting together a defensive game plan to slow people down. That's why I'm interested to see what he has here for Tatum and Brown. I give him a lot of credit for what happened to LeBron in 2011 when he was still a player for the Dallas Mavericks. And they put together a game plan, which I'm told he had a big part to do with in that Rick Carlisle coaching staff that held LeBron to, I think, just 17 points per game in that series. At one point, he scored just 8 points, I think, in game 5. So he's done a tremendous job, especially with solidifying the defense and getting Kyrie to behave. I mean, that's part of it as well, and intertwining some of these pieces they got at the trade deadline. With Joe Mazzulla, to be honest, the jury's still out because I think he's a great regular season coach. You need to give him credit for getting 64 wins. I voted for him third for Coach of the Year. Postseason's a different ball game, and yeah, they're 12-2 right now, but they haven't been put to the test. I'm interested to see what happens at a 2-2 series, what happens, in a tight game where your season's on the line. So I'm still interested to see that type of stuff from Joe Mazzulla. I've been a critic because of the reliance on the three-point shot, but that's something that's never going to change. He's stuck in his ways there. But I give the coaching edge to Jason Kidd. But you're right. Both these guys have taken immense heat. And at the end of this week, next couple of weeks, one of them's going to have a championship, so they almost become Teflon.
Yeah, you brought up two things there that I kind of want to follow up with you. You mentioned the defensive game plans by Jason Kidd, and then you mentioned the high-volume three-point shooting of the Celtics. One of the things that Dallas has done really well throughout the playoffs is defend the paint, defend the rim, those drives to the basket. How much of Boston's high-volume three-point shooting kind of negates what Dallas has done so well on defense throughout the postseason?
Yeah, I agree with that, right? And it would have maybe done the same thing to Rudy Gobert if they faced him in this series. I think Lively is third in opponent field goal percentage at the rim, and Gafford has been number 1 in that department. So that's a massive advantage here for Boston, that they don't kind of go inside. Like you said, we talked about it on the show today. Then you got Porzingis. If he comes back, that pulls Lively. It pulls Gafford out of the paint, which kind of opens up the paint if guys want to drive. So that's a big advantage, I think, for Boston. The other thing is these corner threes, which is a go-to for Dallas, where P.J. Washington, especially against OKC, was knocking them down with ease. Boston defends the corner three better than anybody in the league, both during the regular season and the postseason. So that kind of negates that for Dallas. So in a lot of ways, not only is Dallas overmatched with talent, I think here a little bit if Porzingis is healthy, but the game plan, which has been successful for them, doesn't necessarily match up. Again, like you're talking about the outside shot. Those guys were able to not guard Giddey against Oklahoma City. Then they didn't have to guard Rudy Gobert against Minnesota. With Boston, you got to guard all 5 players out there on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How much pressure is on Boston to win this series? And we've talked about the 64 wins in the regular season. We talked about the dominant run here through the playoffs. This is their second appearance in 3 years in the finals. This is the Boston Celtics we're talking about here, a historic franchise in the NBA, but it's been a while since they've gotten a title. To me, this series, it kind of has a similar feeling to 2011, the last time Dallas was in the finals when they upset the Heat with that LeBron James team that everyone thought they were expected to win. I kind of feel that's the same way this series is with Boston. Everyone assumes they're going to win. Could you speak to the pressure that's on Boston to get it done this year with this core group of players that they've had intact here for the last few years?
Yeah, no, I personally don't feel that it's the same because I felt like the Heat were the big time, favorite in that series. This time, I don't think that's the case. Like you spell it out, like we did at the beginning, 64 wins, 5th best point differential. Like Boston's the favorite, but they had LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh.
Right.
They were even more heavily favored, and that also is at the start of that run. Whereas, all right, you lose, like we're going to bring you back next year. You have another shot. Boston, I'm not sure like what happens after this. Is Jaylen Brown happy continuing to be like the second guy behind Tatum if it never results in a championship? Is the Boston front office now with the second apron stuff going to want to pay Tatum, Brown, both over $300 million? You're paying Porzingis. You just gave Drew Holiday a contract extension, and Derek White needs to be paid. So from a variety of reasons, there's a lot of pressure, maybe none more than is ownership going to be willing to keep this thing together if the cost is exorbitant and it's not leading to titles.
Absolutely. All right, I'll get you out of here on this one. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to think about it yet or if you've made your mind up yet, but do you have a prediction for this series? How do you see it playing out?
I haven't made one yet. A lot of it depends on Porzingis. I think a lot of people are saying that. I'm going to lean Boston. If Porzingis is really healthy, I'll go 6 games. If he's not, but he plays 7 games. If he doesn't play, then maybe I'll give the edge to Dallas. So still a lot of up in the air due to the health of Porzingis. And, I'll make a prediction prior to, and I'm going to go with Boston, but we'll tell a lot there maybe in the first 20 minutes that Porzingis is out there on the floor after game 1 as to whether or not he's going to have enough in the series.
All right. Well, I think what you're saying is it's going to be a good series. I think that's what you're saying. And also, if you want to hear Justin's prediction, tune into his show every day, 4 to 7 p.m. on the SiriusXM NBA channel. NBA Today is the name of the show. Justin Termine is his name. Thank you so much for the time, Justin, and enjoy the series.
Thanks. You tease my show better than me. That's what I should have said when you asked for a prediction. You want my prediction? Tune into the show 4 to 7 Eastern time. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it, buddy.
Take care.